The Celtics beat, and obviously the offseason is underway. There's much to cover. We got it going with Jared Weiss and all the big movement, but we decided to stay for this next show within the Athletic family. And not only that, a special treat, obviously, here as we are joined by David Aldridge. You certainly know him and his career work, long of not just NBA TV, but obviously Turner for a long, long time, Turner Sports, ESPN, Philadelphia Inquirer, also Washington Post, now of The Athletic, as mentioned, and the editor-in-chief there. I feel like the only thing I left out of the resume, Hall of Famer. It's kind of a big deal.
I'm just old. It's old.
That's what our guy Mike Gorman, who is going into the Hall in this next class, would tell us. He's
Yes, I'm
been
very
around
happy
for a long
Mike's
time.
getting in. Well deserved. Mike's been great for a long time. Great.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you being here with us. Like I said, Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti, you know us. We're old hat at this point. David, where I want to start, there's a lot of stuff that we want to get to over the time that we've got you here, kind of wide ranging. And I think a good place to begin things is so often here for this show, we go over the entire NBA, but obviously we're a Celtics focus.
Yeah.
Typically, we are really honed into local beat guys, TV people, former players. Perk will come on from time to time. We'll just get really deep into what's going on locally concerning the Celtics. But where I'm interested in starting with you is the national perspective, because obviously, as an outsider to Boston, but a longtime NBA insider, what's your perspective of what has happened over the course of this past year? Obviously, the big shuffling at the end of the season with Danny Ainge, as we know it right now, retiring, Brad Stevens being elevated, and this team needing a new head coach.
Well, I can't say I was shocked that Danny's leaving. I mean, there's been kind of rumblings for a while that for one reason or another, Danny was maybe not going to be there much longer. But I think most of us were shocked that Brad was going to go upstairs and replace him, and not continue to coach the team. It would have been one thing if they just said, okay, we're going to give Brad everything. I mean, that does happen. Van Gundy got it in Detroit a few years ago. So it does happen in this league still. But the fact that he's going up there just to kind of run the team and not coach anymore, that was a shock. I mean, that was a real surprise. I don't think many people had that on their bingo cards, to be sure.
With that, I mean, do you think it, and there's no way to know, I just could, maybe even will or should, or however you want to label it, work. But Evan said, let's not forget, I mean, we have to at least acknowledge this could be a disaster. How do you think this plays out for a guy that has obviously never done it? And there are plenty of people like Danny Ainge. He never did it before he did, but.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, look, there's no guarantee that this is going to work, right? I mean, it's a completely different skill set. And I mean, completely different skill set. We know that Brad Stevens is a really good coach. He's a great coach. He was a great coach in college. He's been a really good coach in the NBA, whole body of work. I know they've regressed a little bit the last couple of years, but if you look at the whole body of work, you would say this guy is a pretty good coach, he knows what he's doing. And especially coming in with no runway out of college to coach the Boston Celtics and to do a pretty good job of it. But we have no indication. Nobody knows if he knows how to be a GM. He's never done it before at any level, anywhere. Give him a chance to do it for a couple of years before you weigh in with judgments. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, it's a gamble, to be sure. You're taking a guy who was certainly top 12, top 10 level coach in this league, and you're putting him in a position where we have no idea what the range is going to be. We don't know if he knows how to hire a coach. He's never had to do it before. If he hires the right person or not. We don't know, if he's going to be good at making trades or, one of the things that I thought Ainge was really good at was he always kind of was a year ahead rather than being a year behind, So from that standpoint, I thought Danny was really smart at kind of seeing what was down the road and acting aggressively to make it or try to make it happen. We don't know if Brad can do that. I mean, that's a feel thing as much as anything else. Now, doesn't mean it's going to be a complete flaming disaster either. We have to kind of wait and see.
Something, David, I've said on this show a number of times. I feel like, and this is a weird way to phrase it, I'll admit, but I feel like the Celtics have a loyalty problem. And what I mean by that is they're too loyal. They're too loyal to a lot of their players in terms of, back end of the bench guys, just hoping and praying they develop. And certainly when it comes to the front office, they are loyal, arguably to a fault. You've heard Wick Grossbeck come out and say Danny Ainge would have had this job until he didn't want it anymore. They've,
Yeah.
Brad Stevens had 5-6 years left on his coaching contract before he was effectively, reassigned, promoted, call it whatever you want. Doc Rivers, I maintain, would still be the head coach in Boston if he wanted to be. If he didn't force his way to LA, obviously, and ultimately, go to Philadelphia, he'd still be in Boston if he wanted to be. Brad or Danny wasn't going to get rid of him. Wick wasn't going to get rid of him. There's merit to that. There's quality, there's something to be said for that until it comes a time where obviously you need a new voice. And the Celtics have certainly been under fire to some degree for, I don't want to say gifting Brad Stevens the job, but they didn't have a national search. Even if you ultimately landed on Brad, you could have had a search. And I'm wondering, as a longtime, follower and reporter of this league, and someone who certainly knows it better than Evan or I do, to elevate a guy that you view, to your point, is a really good coach, a really good, top half, like worst case scenario, top half of the NBA head coach, and a guy the Celtics said they believe is one of the best coaches in the NBA. Is it easier to replace that guy? Is it easier to find a new coach?
I would certainly think the latter. If you had to pick one, right? If you said you can't have the coach and the GM, you've got to replace one of them. I mean, it would certainly, to me, I think it would be easier to keep Brad where he is and promote. We don't know. I don't know what Mike wanted to do. I don't know. Mike wanted a job. Maybe he did. I don't know. We'll find out, because if he did want the job and he didn't get it, he's not going to be there very long. He'll leave in a year or two. But even if you don't go to him, if you go outside the organization, it's not that it's an easier job, but there are certainly a lot of people that can run a basketball operation, I think. That are around. Some are on teams right now, and some would leave the teams that they're on to come to Boston, and there's some who aren't working for anybody right now that I think could come in and do a good job. I think it's really hard to find a really good coach. I think most coaches in the NBA are okay. I don't think they're like baseball managers to me. Like, how many games does a baseball manager really win in a given year? I mean, most people who follow baseball say maybe 5 or 6, maybe if they make the right call, So for the most part, you're just trying to put your players in a position to win or lose the game. I think it's pretty similar in the NBA. Rick Carlisle's a really good coach. He hasn't won a championship in 10 years. Like, he's a really good coach. He's the top 5 coach to me. So, and he's had Luka Doncic for the last 3 years, and they haven't done anything, I mean, in terms of getting to a championship. So I would say that if Boston has a loyalty problem, they're not the only team in the league that has it. A lot of teams stay with their guys through thick and thin. We just saw Portland, it took them 9 years to make a move on Terry Stotts, who had an okay record, but nothing, not earth-shattering by any stretch of the imagination. The Wizards are, they had Scott Brooks for 5 years. He's not gotten to a single conference final. And there's a reasonably good chance they re-sign him. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's just how it's harder it's more of a gamble to make a change, because then it's your ass on the line. You know what I mean? As opposed to kind of sticking with the status quo.
Yeah, you look at the coaches that are reportedly available. The biggest thing, and this is why, I pushed back on the idea that this is going to be such a slam dunk for Brad, just because I don't think at the time we were recording the podcast, we weren't giving enough acknowledgement of the fact that this could be an absolute disaster, giving somebody the job that has never done it before. But the benefits are, Brad has been coaching this team and helping the development of some of these guys since, their career started. Or if you're, Marcus Smart, basically you walk in and Brad comes in basically the same time. So it's not like Brad knows the personnel of this team probably better than anybody else. He knows what they need better than anybody else. And the thing that he has to keep in mind is, all right, I know, and we all know, look, the superstar league, developing superstars is the only way to really get anywhere or sign them via free agency. So you have 2 potential young studs in Brown and Tatum. One, I think we can all agree Tatum has a potential superstar trajectory here. He's going to be the guy that says, I know what, maybe this isn't so direct, maybe he doesn't know, but he might know, like, Tatum needs this to be added to his game, or Tatum needs a little more direction here or here. So that's maybe where Brad can maybe find an easier way in finding that head coach. Is there a guy out there in your estimation, David, that would be perfect? Because I know there's so many names out there right now that would be perfect for developing two young stars in Tatum and Brown to take them to that next level, because that's really what this whole process is going to be about. It's going to be about, how do I develop these two guys to be the next level stars that I need them to be.
Several people who are out there in the universe, in the coaching universe, that could come to Boston, could handle the expectations, could handle the pressure, could maximize the talent level of Tatum and Brown. I mean, look, Kenny Atkinson, hell of a coach. I think he's a really good coach, and should be a head coach in this league again, because he took nothing in Brooklyn and made a winning team out of it. I mean, they had nothing, and he won with it.
Yep.
I think Sam Cassell, who you guys know very well, I think Sam's ready to be a head coach. I think he, having played in Boston, having been on a championship team, he understands the history of Boston and what it takes to win in Boston. I think he would have a great rapport with some of the young guys. So there are. I'm not going to say there's lots of people that could do it, but I think there are people that could come in and do a good job there. Mike has a certain style. It's about offense. It's not really about defense. But that's okay. He's won a lot of games with that, playing that style,
Yep.
So, like I said, there's lots of people that could come in and handle that job. I think. I don't, and again, whether you could certainly make a case, if it's somebody that hasn't been a head coach before in this league, and you want to make a case for Carol Lawson, you want to make a case for some of the other, Becky Hammond or someone like that, you can make a case for them. It's more of a gamble because they haven't done it before. But could they come in and do a job? Yeah, I think so. Sure.
So Adrian Wojnarowski put out yesterday some of the people Brad Stevens is reportedly intending to reach out to Billups,
Sure.
obviously, who is a favorite around here in terms of his potential for this job. He's obviously on the Clippers staff. You've got Darvin Ham on the Bucks staff, Charles Lee as well for the Mavericks, Jamal Mosley for the Nets, Ime Udoka. Stevens has already talked to internal candidates, past and present, Jay Larinaga, Jerome Allen, who apparently has been offered a similar role with the Pistons that he currently has, Scott Morrison, Joe Mazzulla as well. You mentioned Carol Lawson, who is not yet, as far as we know, up for an interview, a little cagey as to whether she'd even be able to get out of her Duke contract to get the job in the first place. She's, barely been there, only coached 4 games lifetime, but we know Brad and the Celtics in general, big fans of Kara. She was asked about it, I guess, on an Ask Me Anything Bleacher Report thing that she did. And didn't say she wouldn't be interested, just kind of didn't touch it. She said, speculation, you can go down the rabbit hole, and there'll be all sorts of names that continue to surface. It's expected to really be an expansive search on the part of the Celtics and Brad Stevens. Unlike obviously for his new job, certainly for his old job, they're going to really kick the can on everybody and find out what they like. Is there someone, I know you said there are a lot of people you think could do a good job. Is there someone that you think, you believe makes the most sense, especially coming off of Brad? Like we've maintained, going with, and it's sort of, like you go from Doc to Brad, 2 totally different backgrounds and styles and all of it. Do you pivot back? Do you go with a former player and whether that's WNBA in the form of Kara or Becky, or obviously NBA, and maybe it's a first time coach, maybe it's a retread, who knows? But do you go with that presence that obviously this team, short of Walter McCarty being an assistant on the staff a few years ago, they haven't, today's players, they haven't had that person on the bench. Do they need that?
I think, look, not necessarily. I think Jayson Tatum, Jayson Tatum got coached by Mike Krzyzewski. I mean, come on. I mean, he's been coached by the best. So I don't know that he's necessarily looking for an archetype, right? To kind of come in. Would Chauncey be great? Of course, Chauncey's going to be great wherever he goes. Okay, because Chauncey is a personable guy. He knows how to challenge people. He knows how to, I think, get more out of people. He was a point guard, which I think really helps you when you're a head coach, because you're used to having to get everybody going and figure out a way to get that guy a shot that hadn't touched the ball in a week, and I got to get him going. And you have to challenge people. You have to step to people who step to you. So Chauncey will be a good head coach no matter what he does. I think personally he's going to Portland, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's the Celtics. Celtics have cachet.
But wasn't he one of the guys who was, really instrumental in convincing Kevin Garnett to come here?
Yeah, no, but I'm saying it was the bittersweet thing because it didn't work out for him personally, but he understands.
Let's just put that all on Rick Pitino and move on, though, right?
Exactly. The Boston Celtics are the Boston Celtics. You listen when they call you. You have to listen. He gets that. So he would be I think he's going to be a good head coach no matter where he goes. All those names are fine. All of them could do the job. And again, this comes back to I don't know what Brad's looking for in a coach because I've never had to ask him what he's looking for in a coach before. Yeah. So much like the fact that Brad Stevens was picked out of nowhere, nobody had the Celtics picking Brad Stevenson as their head coach. I am not going to be surprised if he picks somebody that nobody is even considering or thinking about, because he certainly has never had to do this before. So I suspect his universe of potential coaches is going to be much different than kind of your traditional, well, this guy's free, this person's free, they have to be on the list because everybody talks about it.
I wonder too, and the Celtics really didn't do this. They brought in some people that had been around, but they didn't do this with Brad Stevens when he got here from Butler. If they go with a first-time head coach, especially a former player, a Chauncey Billups, a Sam Cassell, Carol Lawson, or the list goes on, you can't help but kind of think back to the Steve Nash situation in Brooklyn, where let's surround him with Mike D'Antoni. Let's let's give him some former experienced NBA head coaches that, in the back of their minds might be trying to take his job long term, but in the short term, could help with that transition. I wonder if Brad would opt to do something like that.
Could. I mean, again, that gets back to what does he know and think about what Jayson would want or need, and what does Jaylen Brown want or need going forward. Do they need a nurturer? Do they need someone to kick him in the ass? So I don't think you can preclude anything, I guess is what I would say in terms of qualities for a head coach. You can make the argument for anybody except for John Beeline. You know what I mean? You could make a case for a great college coach that's had success, at a high level. I mean, we were talking about who's going to replace Mike Krzyzewski, and, but this was before they hired Shire, and it was like, well, Jeff Capel could do it, right? Jeff Capel's been at the program. He's gone out on his own. He's won. Tommy Amaker could do it. And then you think about, well, could Tommy Amaker coach the Celtics? Why not? He's had a really good college run of late. So, I mean, people like that. And that's what I'm talking about, kind of off the beaten track that you wouldn't think of normally. You could make an argument for basically anybody because it's a pretty good job. And the guy making the decision has no blueprint. There's just I can't say this is what they should do because the guy making the decision's never done it before. So I have nothing to base it on.
You go back through his quotes over the years too. He does that Bill Belichick thing where he just talks up and praises everybody.
Right. So it's just hard to kind of get a feel for it. Yeah. I don't have a sense that he's like locked into it has to be a Celtic. It has to be somebody from the family. I have no sense that that's something that he views as we have to do that. But if he did it, would it surprise me? No, not really.
Hi guys, Cedric Maxwell here. I want to take a minute to tell you about Marigold Medical. I'm used to keeping my body in great shape, but with arthritis, even the most simple everyday tasks became unbearable. As soon as I called Marigold Medical, I knew I was in good hands. No drugs, no surgery, just an experienced team of caring professionals that wanted to get me back to doing the things I love. Make the call to Marigold Medical and get back to pain-free life.
Evan, you were saying?
Well, it's just one of these things I don't think or maybe it's not being acknowledged enough. We're not talking about it enough, whatever. But it's like, I don't know how much Brad can rely on his relationships with other coaches around the league and trying to pry information out of certain people when it comes to assistants, whether it's Cassell or whether it's Chauncey or whatever. Like, I always love to see the picture or the video, the B-roll footage of whenever the Celtics played the Spurs over the years. There's always some great footage of Brad and Doc, or not Brad and Doc, Brad and Pop in the middle of the stands, sitting down. And I was like, I just want to be like in the vicinity of that conversation. I want to know what they're talking about because I would love to hear a conversation with those two guys. But they're not even talking about basketball; they're just talking about wine or whatever they want to talk about. Right. But I wonder if if Brad has a way to rely on the fact that he has been a head coach and is connected to all these people in some sort of way, if he's able to maybe get some different information out of different coaches when it comes to maybe hiring some of these assistants. I don't know if that's even being acknowledged enough, David.
Yeah. No. Well, first of all, if we're going to talk about betting, how the hell is Julio Jones? How did the Patriots not get Julio Jones?
It's a cap
How
issue.
that happened?
It's a cap issue.
It wasn't a cap. The last thing it was a cap issue. They had the money to absorb that deal. If you want to believe the reports, and I tend to on this end, they ultimately said, we don't want to pay a guy who's 32 coming off an injury that for the next 3 years.
Well, they like to have cap space. They don't
have a number one receiver. It's killing me, David.
They like to have cap space, Adam. You know that. They like to have cap space so they can afford maybe down the line.
Do that though. You could have absorbed that deal, turned half of it into a bone. 7-8 million.
I think it would have been a pretty easy. I don't know. What do I know?
Well, the Titans also are desperate. They don't, outside of AJ Brown, who everybody loves. I love AJ Brown. Who's Ryan Tannehill throwing to?
Yeah, but a 2 and a 4 is not that much. I mean, the Patriots have 7,000 picks every year. Come on.
Well, and they gave a pick back anyway. So really, it was just the 2.
Right.
The
But to your question,
Mohamed Sanu.
To your question, Evan, I don't think that'll be a problem. Brad's really well respected around the league. Most head coaches that I know would never have any problems. If you're interested in one of their assistants for a head coaching job, that's a promotion. Everybody wants their guys to get promoted. It makes them look good. If nothing else, it makes them look good, right? So I don't think that'll be a problem at all. I mean, Brad's spoken very highly of Utah staff, for example. And so if it was a guy on Utah staff that he really liked, I don't have any doubt he'd pick up the phone and call Quinn Snyder. So and again, Brad's really well respected around the league. I mean, I haven't talked. I mean, there's very few people that have ever had anything even remotely bad to say about the guy. I think everybody feels like, he's a straight shooter. He's a pretty above board guy. He doesn't lie. You
better learn to.
Well, yeah. See, that's a new skill set he's going to have to do. Yeah. He's going to have to come up with, like he's never dealt with agents who say, you got to sign my guy or I'm never bringing another client here again. Are they telling the truth? Probably not, but you don't know that at the time, right? So you got to deal with that in real time. So yeah, I mean, those are different skill sets to be sure.
Brad versus Clutch will be a fun war over the next couple of years. Very easy to deal with.
Not even slowly, just taking over the world. Yeah. So, let's get into. We've done plenty on coaches. Let's get into some players. And Kemba Walker, obviously, this came out yesterday. It shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, the fact that it's even viewed as remotely new, like the Celtics tried to get rid of Kemba Walker for Drew Holiday last year. Yeah, we were talking about it last year. That's not at all new. I guess the new element is, Kemba's sort of the latest star or former star to receive effectively the Danny Ainge, Ray Allen treatment, to have the hurt feelings about, thinking your role and being included in trade talks. And now supposedly he's looking for, a mutual parting. He's looking for a fresh start somewhere else where he feels wanted. And I get that. And you talk about not having anything bad to say. Like, nobody has anything bad to say about Kemba Walker, the guy, the person, the man, like, incredible dude. Unfortunately, he's just dealing with a chronic knee injury that he can't stay on the floor. To the idea of getting rid of him, I've been advocating for that for a year. Like, please, yes, move that contract. It's not about Kemba. It's about the deal. Move the money. I just don't know where makes sense and what you also will have to give up with him in order to make that happen, to get something back that you're content with.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be hard trading Kemba Walker for some of the reasons you mentioned. First of all, Kemba Walker's a hell of a player. When he's healthy, he's a hell of a player. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that will take and make big shots in the fourth quarter. He is a guy, as you guys know, that was an excellent defensive player at his position this year. So I don't think that'll be a problem. Point guard is everything in the NBA now. You got to have one. You have to have an elite one to have any chance. Is he elite? Probably not, but he's right below elite. You know what I mean? Like, he's a really good point guard. So, like, if you told me the Lakers are trying to get him, I'd go, yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, that makes sense. Now, the problem is I don't think the Celtics want Dennis Schroeder back, but that's you have to figure out how to make that deal, right? So I think, though, if I won't be surprised if he's moved this summer at all, because I think, to your point, I don't think this has worked out the way he thought it was going to work out in Boston for him. Part of that has to do with the injury, but part of it has to do with Jayson Tatum's really damn good, and if you're asking me who should get the ball at the end of the game, I'm picking Jayson Tatum most of the time, right? So it's really hard to get three really good players to share the ball. It just is. That's why I think nobody will ever admit this in Brooklyn, but I think Harden being hurt has helped them immensely in these first two games of the series, because nobody has any problem with KD taking 35 shots now. It's just really hard. It's hard to do. That's why it only happens when the three guys decide to make it happen. It doesn't happen when you just pick, I want this guy, and then I'm going to have this guy, and then I'm going to have this guy, and we'll make it work. No, the three guys get together and say, we want to play with each other, and they make that happen. So they didn't do that in this case. This was not Kemba and Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown saying, let's play together. No, they couldn't. They were about to lose Gordon Hayward, and they said, well, you got to get something for him. Mm-hmm. So they did. So yeah, that won't surprise me. I mean, like, for example, and again, this is based on no information. You told me Toronto was trying to get Kemba Walker. I go, yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense for them. They still have a window. They still think they can contend. If you tell me we can replace Kyle Lowry with a fixed cost player in Kemba Walker, and it's a high cost, but it's a fixed cost, I know what I'm going to pay. Yeah, that makes sense for me. I mean, with the group that they have. So Miami, same thing, makes sense. Dragic is on his way out. They'll probably resign him for short money, but they need a point guard long term. And Kemba's pretty good. So there's suitors. There's teams where it makes sense to go get Kemba Walker.
There have been some interesting names floating around. Of course, what apparently spurned the Walker, hurt feelings. Danny Ainge trying to deal him for Drew Holiday, like we mentioned before he wound up in Milwaukee. That's, not turned out great in the postseason anyway. And then, more recently, Chris Mannix said they tried to deal him for LaMarcus Aldridge in the middle of the year, which, I mean, that is really a slap to the face if you're Kemba Walker. So I don't know. I mean, we're going to continue to hear stuff, obviously, over the course of the regular season or off season. It's silly season. It's, rumors fly. Yeah. And to that end, Brad Stevens has some very difficult decisions to make. Seemingly, Jayson Tatum is untouchable and should be. I feel the same way about Jaylen Brown, but some have, at least entertained the, would you trade Jaylen Brown for X? We know close to home for you that the Tatum, the Celtics, they'd love to see Bradley Beal there in the event that obviously the Wizards were going to deal him. You'd probably have to part with Brown in that package. Now there are the, Damian Lillard, now that he's not going to get Jason Kidd and he's not thrilled with what's going on. He may want out of Portland. Well, you'd probably have to obviously get rid of Jaylen Brown in that package as well. In terms of Boston acquiring a genuine, real current day star, like I said, Beal close to you, Lillard, guys like that, maybe someone we're not even thinking about. Is there a possibility?
Well, look, on the surface, obviously Beal makes sense. He's, as very close to Tatum, grew up together, coached him in the AAU, all, very, very close relationship. It makes all the sense in the world that they would want to play together. The only problem is the Wizards aren't trading him. I mean, other than that fact,
it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. They've had 2 years to trade this guy and they haven't traded him yet. So I have to think they're going to ride this pony out, now that they had some semblance of success at the end of this season with him and Westbrook playing at a very high level, that they would like to have at least one more year of that grouping together and try to build around them. Now, I don't know if I don't think they'll be able to, but we'll see. So I don't necessarily believe Beal is in play or would be in play, even for Jaylen Brown, who's a really good player and would certainly make a lot of sense if you were a team rebuilding. But I've only asked Ted Leonsis this 1,000 times if he's ready to blow this thing up, and he keeps saying no. So at some point, you got to take the guy at his word that he doesn't want to rebuild. So, are there? I mean, I think Dallas would love to move Porzingis, but I can't see Boston being the team that he winds up with. That just why would you trade for another front court guy that's thirsty and wants the ball all the time? That just does not make any sense to me if you're Boston. So I kind of
stay on the floor.
Yeah, I kind of think that that's not going to happen there. I don't, some of us will depend on the lottery, of course. I think Golden State certainly, I think they certainly have to look at, hey, how do we maximize the time that we have left of Steph Curry at his absolute peak? At some point, it just doesn't, you can't wait for James Wiseman. If you're Steph Curry, you can't wait 2 more years for Wiseman to kind of come into his own. So I think Golden State is certainly a team I would look at potentially. Now, would they trade Draymond? I don't think so. But for Jaylen Brown, you have to think about it, right? You have to think about it. You have to think about it.
What about Lillard?
I'll never say never. Damian, as you guys know, is incredibly loyal to Portland. Incredibly, has really been adamant he wants to try and win there. I think he has to get the coach he wants, whoever that is. He made kind of a forward play to try to get Kidd the job. That just, Jayson's going to have to work on a lot of things, and there's a lot of stuff he's going to have to own and explain, I think, before he gets a job anywhere, not just Portland. There's just a lot of stuff that Jayson Kidd's going to have to deal. He's got to have a story or an explanation for all of this stuff that we know. So if it winds up being Billups, so I think it will be. I think Lillard said he'd be fine with Chauncey as the coach. So look, is it possible? Yes, anything's possible. But I would think it'd be unlikely that Lillard would demand a trade if he gets the coach he wants. And I suspect if he gets some say in, hey, I'd like, we need to get X player, Y player in a trade. And if that means trading McCollum or one of the other guys, I'm sure he'd be down with that if it makes the team better.
Yeah, the loyalty between the two guys, Beal and Lillard, make life a little bit more difficult. I like the Golden State idea for Boston, but not. I think there's the most popular trade rumor, I guess, or at least out there that I think people can accept is that at some point there's a decision that has to come with Marcus Smart and what you need to do with him. And much as it would pain for me to see the Celtics part with him, because he's a really important part of the team's culture.
Yeah.
He's a great defender, although it took us a little slide back this year. That's why I don't think they want Porzingis. They watched Marcus Smart box out Kristaps Porzingis too many times to even want any part of it.
I think Porzingis has a very limited universe of teams right now.
Right.
Between the money and just not being able to stay healthy, and what is he? You still don't know Rick Carlisle, who's a great coach, tried to convince everybody that this guy's a stretch 5 and he's going to revolutionize the game. And you didn't play him down the stretch, in the postseason. So, come on, at some point you are what you are, and you gave him a max deal. So
right, yeah, it's not a great look. It's not a good look.
Yeah,
trying to pump up a guy that can't get off your bench in a do or die game, against the Clippers,
exactly.
who haven't a ton of size themselves either. They're trying to play as small as humanly possible. So
right,
not like they're up, but like the Smart thing. I look at teams that could use a Marcus Smart, and it's teams that are contenders.
Sure.
You're not like the rebuilding teams, like a team like Houston's not going to want Marcus Smart because they're trying to lose as many games and acquire as much talent, young talent, as humanly possible. Smart to, maybe a team like Golden State or a team like Portland or a team, that's, maybe in Indiana or somebody that needs that missing piece of that defensive guy. Maybe that's the way. Boston improves. And I try and look around the landscape and try and figure out like what, in your opinion, what timeline is Boston in? Because of the way they overachieved early with Jaylen and Jayson, going to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of times when they're 19, 20, 21. But you look at this past season, you look at what the Nets are doing right now.
Right.
And you say, yeah, we are not close to that. We're not. I mean, you look yourself in the mirror. You're not close to that. That team is blowing out Milwaukee by 40 points.
Nobody's close to that.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like nobody's close to that. When they're firepower, nobody's got that. Nobody's going to get that, right?
So my question being like, you look at the landscape, Boston's got to get better in some capacity.
Yeah.
That Kemba contract's hard to move. That smart contract's much easier.
Yeah.
I look at that Golden State. I don't know if it happened yet. I've been insanely busy, so maybe I missed it. Minnesota, that pick that they owe Golden State, that has not been. We haven't had the lottery yet.
So the lottery's not till the end of this month. So
right. So we don't. That to me lines up. Like if you're trying to maximize Curry, and give him, I'm not saying Marcus Smart's good, like some unbelievably incredible score. That's not what you need, though. You need a guy who play defense, and you got there, knows his role, knows his job.
Yeah,
I think if he shares the floor with with Clay and Steph, he knows he's not going to be jacking 3-pointers all day. You trade that for that first round pick, maybe that helps both particular programs and both teams in some instances.
Yeah, that'll be harder just because of the money, because Golden State's they're a tax team right now. So you'd have to take Wiggins back or move Wiggins somewhere else, someone like that. It's not that it couldn't happen, but it's harder. It'd be harder for Golden State. To me, a place I'd look, you mentioned Indiana, that makes sense. They kind of are
what a mess that is.
Fired their coach, and I'm not sure what the hell's going on in that locker room in terms of what do you guys want? You just got 2 coaches fired in 2 years. Like you complain about everybody. What do you want?
Meanwhile, Nate is doing a great job with Atlanta.
And yeah, Nate's has a reasonably good chance of being in the conference finals in Atlanta. So no, Atlanta or Indiana would make some sense for Marcus because they have players. Would you like Miles Turner back? Yes, I would like Miles Turner back. You know what I mean? If Indiana were so interested in that, New Orleans would make sense to me. That's another team. Look, they are under the gun. They have got to make that team better. Clock is ticking on both Zion and Brandon Ingram in terms of how long are they going to, be happy not making the playoffs. You know what I mean? So, I'll give you a guy like Steven Adams, who's on a descending contract, who's a big time defensive center, rim protector. Now he's not as good as he was a couple of years ago. Would he help Boston? Yes, he would. Yes, he would. So a guy like that would make some sense if you were in the Marcus Smart trade business, a place like New Orleans would make some sense.
So a couple things before we let you go, because I know we're running a little long here, but things that I just want to hit on uniquely with you outside of everything that obviously we've been talking about concerning the Celtics. For one, if anybody has not checked it out, in the last few weeks, I finally it had been on my to-do list forever. I finally had the chance to watch the Inside Story, the documentary, obviously, of Inside the NBA, which was, people can still check it out. It's on HBO Max. It's I don't know, call it like almost 5 hours of total content across the 4 episodes, profiling Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and obviously Shaq. And you're a big part of it, being there at the network and with Turner Sports for so long. Just a good time and a fun look back putting that together.
It was. As I tell people all the time, I left Turner and I did not leave because I was unhappy at all. I was not. I was thrilled to be there. This is just a lifestyle decision I had to make. It's a great place to work. The people are great. The product is great. Everything that you see on the air is what you would see in the control room when we're all watching the games before, during the first half or the second half. It's the same banter. It's the same yelling at each other in this, really kind of big brother, little brother kind of way. And it's the place is just full of good people is how I would put it. And so to work with them for 14 years and to work on that show, not all the time, but occasionally, it was a great thrill. I enjoyed working with all of them and getting to know all of them. And the chemistry speaks for itself when you watch it every week on the screen. And I know that it's not for everybody. There's some people who want way more basketball, but I think Charles said it best. He said, we could just do an X and O show and we could talk about advanced stats and all that sort of thing. Well, no way would be on 20 years if we had done that. And he's absolutely right. And that's not a criticism of advanced stats. It's just that everybody doesn't watch basketball to know what somebody's true shooting percentage is. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just not what draws people to basketball. It's not what draws everybody to basketball. Let's put it that way. So you have to speak to a broader audience on a different level. And that's what that show does better than any studio show in the history of sports television. I mean, ever. Baseball, football, basketball, hockey. There's no show that does that better than that show does.
No, and as they've all said, it's entertainment first and foremost. I mean, hell, like to your point about X's and O's, they are the antithesis of that, and they and own that. In fact,
Yeah,
welcome that. They embrace that to the point where they have members of that that show doing, excuse me, like segments around like let's see if we even know who these guys play for.
exactly. And I
You know,
and I get it. Look, I have had arguments, or if you want to say discussions with people around the league,
yeah,
other teams within the league office, over 20 years about, hey, they're always dumping on the product. It makes the product look bad. No, it doesn't. People, look, when you're sitting at home and one team's up 70-36 at the half, what do you say? This game sucks, is what you say. That's what you say. Well, that's what they say. They don't pretend like, oh, they can mount a comeback in the second half. No, they can't. So people, they're being honest. It's okay to be honest. And so every game's not great. Some games are great and some aren't. And you got to cop to the ones that aren't. And they do. And I think the proof's in the pudding. If people didn't watch it, it wouldn't still be on. It's been on for 20 plus years now. There's a reason it's still on. There's a reason it's still appointment TV, because people like watching it. Even when they disagree with them, they like watching it.
So, David, the last thing for me here is, and completely unrelated to even what we just talked about, which we could also spend hours upon hours on. I'll try and boil it down to a question, which is, yours is a voice that I hear a lot around my house because my kids love playing NBA 2K20.
Yeah.
And I've never, I guess there are a number of people across the industry I've talked to that I could have asked, and I just never have. What is the process of putting a video game together like?
Man, I got to tell you, I had no idea. I've been doing this, I think now for 6 years, 5 or 6 years. And Harlan got me into it. This is all Kevin Harlan. He got me the gig. That's what happened. It's fascinating. And I have been so impressed working with 2K all these years. The level of detail that they go into, I can't even tell you how much detail they go into to get this right. They go into arenas and just tape ambient noise, not even the main stuff that you hear, the stuff in the background, to get the signage right, to get the advertising right, the placement of the blimp in the arena. Where do they put it? They go and look and find it, and so the level of detail is amazing. They care so deeply about making the product accurate. It's really remarkable. I have just been blown away by it. Because I'm not a gamer. I don't play video games. My kids play, but I don't play them. And it's amazing when you watch your kids playing 2K, and it just sounds and looks like a real NBA game, like the game that you saw or that you're watching. And it's remarkable. And they should get all the kudos in the world. It's been a joy. It's a whole new audience for me. I have 18-year-old kids say, "Oh, you're on 2K. I love you." And I'm like, okay, I'm happy. I mean, I'm glad that you love me. It's great because I like working on it. I love working on it. I just finished my stuff for next year's game, literally a week ago. And the process and the going through the scripts and talking about doing ad libs and allowing me to ad lib with stuff that I know about the league and making that even more, realistic. It's great. And the face capture recognition, and I've put the suit on before. And
yeah,
I'll give you one example of how realistic it is. One time I went down to Atlanta just to do this, to tape for a couple of days, to do stuff. So what they would do is they put you in a motion capture suit.
mm-hmm.
They would hire tall actors. They would hire people, actors who were like 6'9" and higher. Now think about that. How many of those are in the world?
Right.
There can't be that many of them, right?
Yeah.
They would hire tall actors only so that I could,
with the microphone,
they would get the arm movement of me holding the mic up to a 6'9" guy so it would be accurate. That's how much detail they go into to make this game right, and it's incredible. It's incredible. And again, the proof's in the pudding. I mean, the game is as popular now as it's ever been. And it's a testament to the work that they put in.
Well, my kids love it. They play it, like I said, and they marvel at the realism of it as compared to watching games. But me, maybe just sort of the broadcast nerd in me, it's something you hit on before. It's, listening to like the halftime reports and things like that. All of the all of the different scripts and ad libs and everything else that you must have to record
Yeah.
just for them to be, properly spliced in whatever the AI to dictate where it all goes. Like
Yeah.
that's what blows my mind. The amount of talking you must have to do just in preparation for the game.
It's a lot of talking. Takes the better part of a week to do it all. I'm doing sideline reporting. I mean, Harlan and the guys that are doing the color, they have to do twice as much as I'm doing.
Sure.
Because that's every player on every team in the league that they have to say something about.
Yeah.
And it's a labor. It's an incredible labor. And we do it because we really, I know I've talked to some of the other people that are involved. We do it because we really are proud of the product. Like we really are happy to be associated with a company that takes it as seriously as they do.
Yeah, I think I have two quick questions on 2K.
Sure.
One, was it weird hearing yourself for the first time in the video game? You're like, holy bleep, that's me. I can't believe it's actually happening.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. It was my voice, but obviously it's a two-dimensional picture of me, right? So it's like they try to make it as lifelike as possible, but at the end of the day, it's a two-dimensional picture of yourself. And it was kind of weird. But again, the first thing, of course, you say is, I don't wear that suit. I don't have that suit. What is that? But yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird. Sure. Yeah. But you get used to it. You do.
But it's like athletes, right? Everybody wants to be in a video game.
Exactly.
I had no desire for this. This was not on my, I have to do this before I retire. It was a happy accident. I'm glad it happened because it's been an eye opener for me, but it was not on my bucket list. It just, it's just one of those things, if somebody said, let's skydive today. I don't have any desire to skydive, but I guess if I did it, I probably would have a great time doing it.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing you'll ever do. Trust me, I did it once and it was.
Is that right?
It's absolutely nuts. So if you ever want to have the craziest experience of your life, do that. I guess my only other follow up here, David, is who do we talk to about getting rid of the ability to skip your pregame stuff? Because like Shaq and Kenny and EJ, they get this big thing before the game starts as it loads. You can't skip that part, but then we get to you, and it's just like. Hit that A button or the X button a couple of times, and all of a sudden now we're playing. We gotta get rid. We need to hear from you. We need that.
Hear it.
It's what I know. People do this on Twitter all the time. They say these things. They say I skip you all the time, and I always say back to them. You know what? The check cashed. I'm sorry. Yeah. You can skip me all you want. I looked at my statement. The money's in the account.
Well played. Well, it's been a great thrill, and thank you so much for coming on. I know I've been bugging you from time to time about getting you on with us, and I'd love to do it again at some point.
Sure, my pleasure, guys. Good luck with your search.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll let you know how it goes. You'll see it when we all do, I'm sure. David Aldridge, again, editor-in-chief at the Athletic in DC, of course. Part of the NBA 2K family and long of Turner Sports and all of it. And for anyone that has not checked out the Inside Story documentary or 4-part manifesto, in a matter of speaking, do that, because it's a great, entertaining, fun look back at history into where they are now there with inside the NBA. But yes, a lot going on in the Celtics world universe, and we will find out how things progress in the weeks and months to come here this offseason. Kevin Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. We'll catch you again next time.